the Cinema Judge!
Hello and welcome to the Cinema Judge. To all my regulars out there, welcome back. And if you're new to the show, welcome aboard. Now, approaching the bench today, we have the next installment of the Transformers movies. This one is called Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. Now, here's the tagline. During the 90s, a new faction of Transformers, the Maximals, joined the Autobots as allies in the battle for Earth. Here's a trailer for Transformers: Rise of the Beasts.
For centuries, our kind has stayed hidden on Earth. But darkness has found us again. Prime. This is about the fate of all living things. Unicron is coming.
It won't stop!
Back up!
Oh, I thought we were boys.
You want it? Come and get it.
You brought a human here?
I'm nobody. I ain't even seen nothing. I'm not even seeing anything right now.
Think you holding weight and you haven't met the aim. Stop!
This is not our war.
Optimus, we must trust each other to protect the home we all share.
How big can this guy be?
He eats planets. So, like, way bigger than a planet.
In the end, everything you cared for will be consumed.
Maybe there's another way to save our home.
You've never faced anything like this. Let them come.
Yo, Noah, take the wheel.
Now, first things first. When you think of Transformers, you think of Optimus Prime in that voice. And it's voiced by Peter Cullen. The guy is just legendary. And up next, we got a really treat for you. I love this little featurette coming up. This one talks about him and how he got the gig. And I just love this. And as most of you know, this always starts off as a TV show. And if you want to watch the TV version of this, at the end of the show, I'm going to give you a website so you can watch it. Because in these featurettes, they have on the set footage, him talking, and you can see everything that you hear. So if you're into that kind of thing, at the end of the show, I'll give you the website. But in this featurette, you're going to hear from the director and Peter Cullen himself. It's just a great little feature. Check it out.
When I voiced Prime for the very first time, I was living with my brother Larry, who was a Marine, and I said, I'm going to an audition. I'm going to be a truck. And he started to laugh. And he said, a truck? And I said, this is a leader. This is a hero. And his demeanor just changed. He just went, well, Peter, if you're going to be a leader, be strong enough to be gentle. And I got to the audition, and I said, my name is Optimus Prime from the planet Cybertron. I had no doubt that this is what a hero should sound like, and I was convinced I was going to get that role. This is an emergency. Can you hear me, Mirage? Roll out.
Hey, who the hell was that?
Peter Cullen gets behind that mic and he goes deep into Optimus Prime mode. You're like, whoa, this is really happening.
We have one last hope.
Steven Caple Jr. really is sensational. He's thoughtful, he's energetic, he's moving, he instills that confidence.
Take the wheel.
Yeah, baby!
Every Transformers movie, Optimus Prime and a lead human being are always close. And this is the first time in the film where you see these two characters who are trying to figure things out.
You brought a human here?
Transformers Rise of the Beasts has the same ingredients that were there at the beginning. There's that integrity, there's a dignity, there's courage. It's an honor to be able to do this character. I've talked with a lot of people that grew up with Transformers, and I don't take them for granted. I love you guys. This is Optimus Prime, June 9th. I invite you to the movies.
Talk about immortality. His voice will live forever. That character will always be his. No matter what happens down the line, how many decades when somebody else might have to take over, he will always be the one. Now, coming up next, we're going to hear from the director, Steven Caple Jr. And he's going to talk about casting Anthony Ramos and Dominique Fishback. And I really love this interview. Talks about them talking to each other and how they had to do it over the internet and didn't know if it would really work. And when he was talking to Anthony, he realized that him and Dominique go way back. So they're good friends. And despite all the lag and the internet connection, that he just knew that these two were going to be just perfect together. And immediately after him, we're going to hear from Anthony and then Dominique, and are going to talk about the movie itself and just working together.
With Anthony Ramos, he was the first one to be casted for the film. And I was like, wow, this dude's a really physical actor. Like the way he uses his traits. He has a unique charm and a level of vulnerability that's really hard to find. And he's like a Swiss Army knife. And so we brought him into the mix. And so I remember talking to Anthony one day and saying, hey, one of my top actresses, the top actress I want, her name is Dominique Fishback. And he goes, me and Dominique go way back. Like, we're really close friends. And I was like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, we're both from Brooklyn, this, that, and the other. So they already had a connection. I was like, this might be perfect. And so when we actually had the chemistry with these two together, it was via Zoom. It was on the internet. And I was really worried. I remember being like, are they going to be able to vibe off each other? There's always that lag with internet connection. They're probably not going to be able to hear each other. And with that, and there was totally lag, disconnecting the whole nine, they still had this energy that just was popping off of a Zoom recording. I'm like, whoa, this is insane. They work perfectly together. It's like they just mesh, and they both brought this sort of edge to this, this Brooklyn personality to it, but as well as they were just fun to watch. And so I'm glad that worked out. But Anthony knew her beforehand, and that helped out a lot.
To be doing this kind of film and bring this this adventure, you know what I'm saying, this kind of movie to the hood, I mean, that for me was what I was most excited about. Plus doing it with my friend, who's also from Brooklyn. She grew up in East New York, Dom, and I grew up in Bushwick. So, and it's cool.
So I play Elena Wallace, and fun fact for all you Brooklynites, Biggie fans, Biggie's last name is Wallace. He's Christopher Wallace. So I'm really excited that we got a little Biggie up in there. Elena Wallace is her name. And she works at the museum. She's very curious. She's kind of being a bit held back by her boss. And so she takes her life into her own hands when she sees a sculpture. It's called a statuette. And she gets curious about it, and because she's curious, she starts investigating it, and then that kind of opens a whole new world, which then brings Noah into her life and the Autobots. And that's kind of how she starts.
Loaded with fun little facts in those interviews. Now coming up, we're going to have another featurette. In this featurette, you're going to hear from the director, Anthony and Dominique. They're going to talk a little bit more depth about the story.
It's about to be epic. It's about to be crazy. It's about to be epically crazy.
In chronological order, this is the second Transformers movie. It takes place during the 90s, shortly after Bumblebee. We find a kid struggling with how he's able to provide for his family.
My character Noah is ex-military, and I feel like I'm failing at every turn. Then I meet Mirage.
Pete Davidson is the voice of Mirage. He's kind of like the rebellious Autobot.
You looking good, man? There you go. Now we're friends.
Elena works at the museum. She's investigating something which brings Noah into her life. Who are you?
The janitor.
Really? And that kind of opens a whole new world for her. Let's get real. Oh, it's real.
We go on this crazy journey with the Autobots. We meet the Maximals. We meet the next level of villains.
How big can this guy be?
He eats planets. So, like, way bigger than a planet.
There's a lot of action. There's humor.
Stranger danger!
And there's a lot of heart. They're going against their biggest nemesis ever.
Everything you cared for will be consumed.
They've never faced anything like this before.
Let them come.
Now, here's a fun thing about this franchise, or any franchise that has a lot of movies in them. More voices are coming in as writers, producers, directors, and it's really fascinating that now the younger voices are coming up and adding their own stamp to it. In that vein, if you will, we have the director talking about that next, about how he was a fan of this when he was younger. Now here he is today directing it. And I love that, how they could put their own little stamp on it, put their own little feelings into it. And that's what the director talks about, how now he is the one in charge. So immediately after that interview, we're going to hear from one of the original producers, Mark Varadian. And if I said that wrong, I truly apologize. But it must be really funny from his point of view that he's been doing this for all these years. And now a young man comes in who was just a young kid when he first heard about all this stuff. But now here he is adding his voice to it. And it's really kind of cool just hearing somebody who's been with it for so long appreciating that now new voices are coming in.
I was a huge fan of Transformers as a kid, so that's where it all started for me. Like my first introduction was the actual movie, the Transformers movie back in the 80s, and VHS tape. Oh my God, I remember watching it at a friend's house, and I remember just the colors drew me in. But that was like my first real intro to Transformers. And then after that, it was Rise of the Beast, which I want to say was early 2000s that I started to get into it. And I just remember the impact it had on me. It was something new and different. I remember the CGI was different, in terms of a cartoon. And I was kind of like transitioning from my boy phase to my teenage years, so I kind of disappeared for a little bit. And then Michael Bay brought me back with 2007's, Bayverse start of Transformers 1. And that's when I was like, whoa, like what is this? And that's where I really got like enthralled and watched every single movie afterwards. So I'm part of the Bayverse fan club and Nightverse and Bumblebee.
Steven was somebody who grew up on our movies that we made originally. So he was a fan of those movies. And we've never really had somebody like that step into this role in the franchise. And he grew up in a different time and a different place. It's generational to some extent because he just had a different view of Transformers and what was special about them.
One word that you're going to keep hearing when people are talking about this movie is fresh, bringing a new perspective to it, new voices. Now, we just heard some interviews from the director and producer talking about that. In the next couple interviews, they go into it even a little bit more. The producer talks about what he brings in, and then also the director talks about little characters that he loved growing up, what ones he wanted in here. And you hear from the producer talking about, hey, we know this guy was a fan of this stuff. It gives us permission now, because when you're in your little vacuum of a world, you might not see outside of it too much, or what other people like in particular movies, books, short stories, whatever it may be. His voice coming in here, the new freshness, that gave them resolve to say, we can now do a Beast Wars movie and bring in all these elements that we haven't before. So that's what these next several interviews are going to say. And I'm not going to interrupt them. I'm going to let them talk back and forth. We'll start with one, go back to the other. You'll see what I'm saying. But we're just going to let them tell you what's going on. And immediately after that, we're going to play a featurette. And that one goes in a little bit more in depth into this new voice and what Steven brings to it. And it's all up to you. It comes down to is, what do you think? You listen to the stuff, you see the movie, all that matters is what you think. So hear those interviews and that featurette.
When I read the actual script, it was hard to say no. You know, I had like ideas and thoughts that I wanted to implement, characters that I actually love on screen, or at least in the cartoons that I wanted to bring to on screen. And I just started to like, you know, really dive into it. And that's how the Transformers came about. Paramount had asked me, and yeah, they felt like I was probably the right guy for it and had a certain amount of knowledge, but also heart, you know, in terms of like what I want to bring to the table with the characters. So, yeah.
When Steven heard Beast Wars, he grew up on that part of the franchise and loved it and completely bought into it. So in a way, he gave us the courage to say, well, let's make a Beast Wars movie. It's gonna be cool. It's not gonna be, you know, too far over the line.
Unicron is in our film, and so the Unicron graphic novel was really a big, huge influence on what I wanted to bring to the franchise. He is a character that was always kind of looming in the background in the Baysverse, you know, in terms of the movies that he created. And we never got to really see the live action version of Unicron, and that was huge. So with the colors and how I wanted to implement this sort of godlike figure all really came from the graphic novel and the old 1986 cartoon movie. So the design is kind of like based off of that, as well as even some of the score and music cues we took from the 1986 cartoon movie, just to sort of create his own and unique sound. So I was very influenced by the nostalgia on what was done in the past to create the Transformers that we see today.
When somebody like Steven comes to the table and he has, you know, a very fresh vision for, you know, the action and has watched all of the other movies 50 times. So he knows what we've done.
Every project that I basically say yes to and or create or get involved with has a piece of me in it. Like if I don't feel that at all, I probably won't do the project. Like I first read the script and I go, there goes the story. Then I go, what do I have to say? And is there me on the table? And if not, how can I incorporate myself? And so I really pull from personal things around me that I'm either going through or transitioning in with life, some part of my childhood, anything with my wife and family. Like I'll incorporate it inside the film and kind of make the film a part of me. And so it becomes very personal. And I think you need that, especially with big films like this, where the scope is so huge and long hours on set, and you could be in post for a year trying to create this. You need that motivation throughout to say, okay, I am saying something. Okay, there is a part of me on this tape. I think people are really going to enjoy this. I want to connect to my audience, and I want them to feel like I left everything out there. And so I have to kind of find those elements that I can bring to every project and every character.
Back up! Oh, I thought we were boys.
Yeah, cut.
Okay, moving on.
I was a huge fan of Transformers as a kid. I was very influenced by what was done in the past to create the Transformers that we see today.
Steven's creativity is phenomenal. He's got really inventive and fresh ideas, and he's bringing a totally different sensibility to this movie.
This is about the fate of all living things.
This is the first time the Maximals are ever seen in live action. We wanted to make sure everything was as authentic as possible.
I'm not the one to fear, Prime.
The story takes place in the 90s, and so we worked really hard to capture that era. Everything from the type of music we're playing, the clothes that Noah and Elena are wearing. And when it came to casting, Anthony Ramos and Dominique Fishback are both from Brooklyn. They brought their own authentic Brooklynite attitude that just really pops on screen.
You brought a human here?
I'm nobody. I ain't even seen nothing. I'm not even seeing anything right now.
On this film, we need to do something different. So we found unique locations that showcase the size and scope of this story. We shot on top of Machu Picchu, so that was a real challenge.
Maximals, Autobots, roll out!
Stepping on set with Steven and seeing his vision has been amazing.
Working with Steven is all about humanity and all about heart.
Maybe there's a way to save our home.
I've never had more fun than I've had with Steven. He instills confidence, and he really is sensational.
Let them come.
Yo, Noah,
Take the wheel.
Now, as you've been hearing, in this particular movie, there's the Maximals. And this goes back to TV versions, and if you follow this world, they're out there, but they've never been part of this universe per se. So coming up next, we're going to hear from Anthony Ramos and also the director talking about that, about now how they're bringing these animals in, or not animals, but these new characters, and how they wanted to make them look real and authentic, and just adding it into it. And then after those interviews, we're going to have another featurette. And in this featurette, it focuses explicitly on those characters.
It feels great. It feels amazing. It's wild. I watched all the movies. I saw all the movies. I used to watch Beast Wars, which was like one of my favorite TV shows. And when I read the script and I found out that Primal and Cheetor and all of the beasts from Beast Wars were going to be in this movie, or most of them, I was like very excited. I think it was something about these like fantastical beasts, just like being able to do these like crazy things, and like you still connecting to. There was almost a sense of family with the Beast Wars too, like where between Cheetor and Rhinox and Primal, and like they had this thing where it was like you're seeing all these different animals come together, but then they like transform into these other things, you know what I'm saying? And they fight together and they protect each other and they love each other and they really like, they go to war together. And it was like this, just, I think what was so cool about it was just like the kinship between them and like, you know, and how like relatable they felt, you know, like it was crazy. Like, wow, how do I feel like I feel this gorilla, you know, like I feel this cheetah, you know what I'm saying?
Creating the Maximals was a very unique and cool process. Like, again, we've never seen them in live action. You know, we've seen them in some of the actual graphic novels, and we've seen them in a cartoon back in the early 2000s. And there's actually a reboot now that's actually out of the cartoon series. So it was a huge responsibility to introduce the Maximals in this film, make sure that they looked the part, make sure that their story makes sense, and make sure that we're introduced to a new faction that falls in line with the DNA of the rest of the Transformers. Optimus Primal is a very noble character, and he's very much connected to the human beings on Earth. He is teaching, if you will, through this journey, a lesson to Optimus Prime, and understanding that there's a bigger fight at play, and we know you're worried about your people on Cybertron, but we have to worry about everybody. And so he's a big, huge, I would say, character and element to Prime becoming the Prime that we're all used to knowing in the Michael Bay films and Transformers 1, 2, 3, and 5. So the Maximals sort of help lift Optimus Prime and to help him become the Optimus that we know today. We've seen the Maximals in graphic novels, and we've seen them in the cartoon, but we have never seen them in live action.
We took an oath to protect the universe.
He's a really larger-than-life, likable character.
There is more to us than meets the eye.
Air Razor carries this sense of regalness with her, but at the same time, she's a fighter.
What up, done? Let's get it.
Rhinox is a beast.
Almost indestructible.
Stranger danger!
Cheetor is the man. It's a sense of family with the Maximals.
Autobots and Maximals, all as one. Maximals, maximize!
Now, you may or may not know this, but this movie is loaded with massive talent. Peter Dinklage, Michelle Yeoh, Pete Davidson, and of course, Ron Perlman. This guy, if you're a movie fan, Ron Perlman from Hellboy and on, to get him to be in this movie, what a giant get. This guy is just a master. In this movie, he voices Optimus Primal. So coming up first, we're going to hear the director talking about getting Ron Perlman because, well, he's Ron Perlman. And then after that, we're going to hear from Ron Perlman talking about just the honor of being involved in this film.
Ron Perlman came about because, one, it's Ron Perlman, the legend, and two, he actually was Optimus Primal in a cartoon before. And so, like, I actually heard his voice before as Prime one. I was like, oh wow, this is actually pretty cool. Like I dug it. And so when I brought him in and had a conversation with him, he was like, man, I'll be glad to actually voice Optimus Primal again. And I don't want to say it was like having a second shot, but he had ideas too that he would want to, you know, make a little different from what he had in the cartoon. So already I felt like we had this sort of like, all right, we both are accepting the challenge of making Primal really stick out on screen. And he just felt like there was a sense of pride behind playing Optimus Primal again. And his voice always sits in that like baritone, dark, gritty voice, and I was like, that'll be great for Optimus Primal, you know, just because of the size and who he is. I think that up against Peter Cullen, I think we just had a nice balance for back and forth between the two, and so that's how we casted Ron Perlman.
It's kind of an honor when you enter into a franchise that is as part of the American quilt as this one is. I mean, it's been with us almost 2 decades. So many important voices have been part of it, and you feel as though you're being handed the reins to something that you better be careful with, and you better show a lot of love and honor to. Steven Caple, who directed this, has infused a lot of very, very modern American culture into this, which is going to give it a completely new feel and a new look and a new sound. It's always fun to play a character who is as fierce and as badass as Primal is, and but particularly what was most attractive to me about him was the size of his heart was almost greater than the size of his muscle. The love he has for the people he's been sworn to protect is infinite and profound, and so that's true heroism. And when you're an actor, you look for that.
Like I said, class act, professional, talented, just incredible. I would love to when they sit down and talk to him. Imagine the stories he has. Just look at his film list. It's amazing. The guy is so talented. Now, coming up next, we're going to hear from the director, Steven Caple Jr. And he's going to talk about working with the great, the incredibly talented Peter Cullen, who plays Optimus Prime. Well, he does the voice for him. And hearing a director get so passionate about talking about working with somebody is so refreshing, because I know for one thing for sure, to be able to be in the same room as Peter Cullen would be just amazing. And I like that he shares that and he's honest about it by saying, this guy's a legend, but he doesn't act like it. That just proves what kind of relationship these people have on set and when they're working together. And it's very refreshing, because after that interview, we're going to hear from Peter Cullen singing the praises of Steven Caple. And it's just great to hear them both praise each other's work.
I got emotional meeting Peter Cullen, and you would think it's because it's Peter Cullen, he's the voice of Optimus Prime, but it was honestly how sweet he was. You know, he's a really genuine guy. He's from Montreal, he's from Canada, and so he has that personality with him. And on top of that, he was just really good, nice guy. Like you want to think, all right, here goes this star, and when you walk in the room, you're like, do you know who you are? You're Peter Cullen. You know, like you're the legendary Optimus Prime, and he does not act that way at all. You know, a very humble guy. And so I got, you know, very emotional after our first session, because the way Optimus Prime sounds, it's not how Peter Cullen talks. You know what I mean? Like Peter Cullen gets behind that mic, you see his eyes sort of dim, and he goes deep into Optimus Prime mode. You're like, whoa, this is really happening. I could not believe it, and I'm hearing it in the ADR booth, and I'm just like, whoa, this is amazing. He has the presence of a giant, and it just was just an amazing experience.
Steve Caple is a fabulous director, and what he's put together, and I'm not blowing smoke. I mean, I worked with this young man, and he is so talented, he's insightful, he has a sense of so many things, and he pulled it off, and he made everything take on a new light. So I probably have I've heard more than once that this is the best one ever.
And that's a big swing right there. First of all, saying that this is the best one ever, but also imagine if you're the director and you're receiving this praise from the great Peter Cullen. My mind would just go, it'd just check out and just go, boop. Wow, this is a dream come true. Now, speaking of dream come trues, check out that segue. Up next, the director talks about getting Peter Dinklage, and he talks about the character and how he addressed it and how he approached it. And these are the kind of interviews where I just eat up, because this is getting behind the scenes and delving into the creation of a character. And I love how he shares that with us. And immediately after that, we're going to hear from Peter Dinklage talking about where he came from and where he grew up, and just in the area or the era that this movie takes place in and where he was at that point. It's just kind of a cool little story.
I'm a huge fan of Peter Dinklage. As I told you before, I'm a fan of actors, usually before I even cast them. And I was really hoping that he would play this role. Man, I wanted a bad guy who could be scary, intimidating, menacing, but yet had this like sense of intelligence and how he talks and how he speaks. And Peter Dinklage is that already. And so when he came in, he just brought this really dark character to the table. And when we were in this booth and trying to find the right voice, he was like, I want to make sure though that yes, he's dark, yes, he's big, yes, he's scary, but he's not dumb. He's smart, and he's always one step ahead of you, and that's how he maneuvers. So in the film, the character maneuvers that way. He's always plotting and setting up things. And then the second option is, if you don't accept the offer or if that doesn't work, then we can fight and then we can battle, and I'm gonna show you who I really am. And so Peter Dinklage really understood that, and just to be in the same room as Peter Dinklage and actually carve out a character and go through the different like voices and stages and like working on inclinations and how you speak was just like a really like cool experience. You know, it wasn't one where he had to come to the table and say, this is my voice, I'm gonna just use this. He really tried to embody Scourge, and he really pulled from a lot of the Scourge designs. Like he would look at the design itself and say, okay, what are his parts, what's moving on him, so he can get a feel of how to project his voice and who is he standing over and what they're looking at. So he took an actor's approach to play Scourge, which I think shows across the screen.
Well, I remember I was living in Williamsburg, Brooklyn in the 90s, which felt like a wasteland of Transformers back then because nobody was living out there. And the music from the 90s, which this is infused with, it has a lot of fun to it while threatening the entire universe. I'm very excited.
Now, if you're unfamiliar by some chance what Peter Dinklage has done, he was in Game of Thrones, and he was also in Cyrano, just to name a couple. But if you've never seen Cyrano, give it a shot. It is so well done, and it's just a powerful story. Again, if you haven't seen Cyrano, check it out. He does monstrously great work in there. Now, coming up next, we have another famous voice that does a voice in this movie, Pete Davidson. You might ask, who is Pete Davidson? He's in a lot of commercials. Well, he was on SNL. He's done a lot of movies, in a couple that are quite autobiographical, if that's the right word I'm looking at. Because he's had one heck of a life. People just look at him just as this comic, but there's so much more to him. And I'm so glad he's found himself, because when he first came onto the scene, it was a giant splash, and there was a lot going on in his life. But I think he dialed it all in. He focused everything down. And right now he's on this incredible path, and I really, really look forward to see where he goes, because I think he's finally controlled that splash moment, and he's found his path, for lack of a better word. So we're going to hear from him coming up first, and then we're going to hear the director talking about getting him, and then again, finding the voice, finding the character, and using his abilities just to work it all out. And then we'll go back to Pete Davidson, and again, the noise that you hear in the background is there from the red carpet. So when you hear that kind of stuff, that's what's happening. But he talks a little bit more about the movie and all that kind of stuff. I'll just let it ride.
The appeal is Transformers. I was blown away, but of course, yeah, I couldn't believe it was in the 90s, which is all my favorite stuff. It's Sandler, The Mask, it's Wu-Tang, it's all my favorite hip-hop. It's the best. Steven's the best. I'm very excited to be here. Steven gets all the credit, man. He called me and he's like, let's have some fun in the booth. He showed me a cut, and we kind of just, made this thing together and had a really good time. But he was just like, go nuts in the booth and have fun. And I'm really psyched. I can't believe like I'm even here, really. Like, this is crazy. This is really, really cool.
we really settled on Mirage and Pete Davidson, who actually ad-libbed a lot, some of his character moments. And so they built a bond over just kind of how goofy and crazy Mirage is, right off the rip. So you could kind of like him. There's like this warm feeling. You're like, I do want to go on an adventure with this guy.
It's everything. I grew up watching this stuff. I was like, as I was pulling up here, I was like, oh, wow, this is wild. Yeah. As you can see, I've not done many of these, but yeah, this is really sick. I'm stoked. The movie's amazing, and I'm just happy to be a part of it. It's really cool. This thing is crazy, man. I mean, like, just as far as like the action, besides like, Ramos and Dominique are amazing, and everybody's great in it, but like, you really can tell who's fighting who, like the way that Steven directed it, and just the music and everything, the whole vibe. It's a really crazy experience, and I'm very excited for everyone, and I'm super excited just to be a little part of it.
Now, as we stated before, this movie takes place in the 90s, so the characters aren't as comfortable necessarily with humans as they are in recent films. So explaining that, we have the director talk about where they are and what happens. And then immediately after that, we have a scene. Now, in this scene, Anthony and Dominique, each playing Noah, and she's playing Elena, they're walking in this forest-type area. And then pretty much some of the Transformers and the Maximals show up, and there's a giant, almost duel. Like, there's a standoff saying, I won't ask you again, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's basically it.
What I think is interesting about Noah's journey is that in every Transformers movie, Optimus Prime and a lead human being are always close. They're usually close, and this is the first time in the film where they're actually bumping heads at the very top of the film. They're not friends just yet. Optimus has one agenda, and that's to get his people, the Autobots, home to continue this war that they have on planet Cybertron with the Decepticons. And so Noah is not in his peripheral. It's not his goal right now. And so that kind of combats with Prime's goal to try to just get his people back to Cybertron. Noah's goal to try to protect his sort of like bumps heads. And so you see these two characters who are trying to figure things out along this journey. Will they accept each other? Will they become friends? And that becomes really the heartbeat of the film, is whether or not Prime and Noah will ever work together. Will we break that line, that barrier from, human beings and what we're considering these aliens?
Who are you? Why are you hunting for the key?
Yo, Donkey Kong, stay away from my friends! Mirage! Don't worry, your boys got this. Stranger danger! Stranger danger! Hey! Not so fast!
Hey, over here, kitty.
Stand down! I won't ask a second time.
And as you heard in that scene, you hear a lot of the voices just make a quick appearance from Pete Davidson and so on. Now, coming up next, we're going to have the composer of this film. And first and foremost, I'm going to butcher this, so I just want to say that first and foremost. I even try to look up how to pronounce his name, so I truly apologize to this incredibly talented artist. The composer, Dominique Bontemps. We hear from him, and he's talking from the red carpet. Then after that, we're going to have a featurette for you. Now, in this featurette, they do a deep dive into the music. They talk about all the collaborators and stuff like that. Without music, a movie can just be flat. You don't want music to overtake it, but you want it to just enhance a scene. That's the line composers and musicians walk when they have to construct the music for a film. So first composer talks, and then we have a featurette going a deep dive into the music.
The music of these movies, the cinematic universe, is legendary. Steve Jablonsky, huge shoes to fill, and I was extremely in awe of trying to write the music for this film. But I hope the fans like it, and I put everything I could into this. The movie's set in 1994 in Brooklyn, so I really wanted to make sure that you felt the cultures of the people where our heroes are set. So we have a little bit of Brooklyn hip-hop at the first half. When we go off to Peru, make sure we feel that Afro-Peruvian rhythms. And at the end of the movie, it's a little bit more, let's say, synthetic, to not say too much. But every single space, it is a Transformer score. It is big, it is epic, it is full of action, heart, humor, but it still folds in the je ne sais quoi, the characteristics of every environment we're in.
You've never faced anything like this. Let them come.
There is a cinematic quality to the music. It's a pretty epic score.
This movie being set in 1994 allowed us to establish a different sound. I wanted to infuse a little bit of groove that reflected the environments and the cultures of the characters. Steven wanted to do something very special. So he asked Toby Nwege, who plays Reek in our film, for Toby to actually do a song.
It all came together in a masterful collaboration.
Seeing him live in performance, I was like, how can we capture that energy in a Transformers film?
Grill, guard your grill. Ain't nobody out here hard to kill. Again, I pack a plan and peel your cap from front to back. How you still for hard to steal?
It was really a phenomenal opportunity. I just couldn't believe it.
It was a great pleasure to have not only Steven, but also Toby in the studio here with us to really hear what we did.
I can't wait for people to check it out.
Get it, baby!
Now, can you even imagine trying to create music for a movie? What a daunting task. So it's always fun to get behind the scenes, look at that and the whole process. Now, coming up next, we're going to hear from the director, and he's going to say what he believes people will experience when they see this film.
I think the audience is going to go for a thrill ride in this one. You know, I feel like the audience is not just going to watch the film. I think they're definitely going to experience it. You know, I feel like we spent a lot of time diving into the characters so that they can care about them. So as they're going through this big action sequences, I think they're really going to feel emotionally connected to all the characters in the film. You know, there's humor, there's a little bit of horror, and there's a lot of action. And again, there's a lot of heart. So I feel like you get a little bit of everything when watching Transformers Rise of the Beast.
Now, I didn't forget. If you want to watch a TV version of this and see all the stuff that you just heard, even more so, go to bit.ly/CinemaJudge or go to the City of Bloomington, Minnesota's cable access page and look up Cinema Judge. Either way, a lot of these shows are on there. This one is, of course, in a lot of past episodes. So if you like watching interviews, clips, and everything like that, check it out. bit.ly/CinemaJudge. Well, I truly hope you enjoyed our in-depth look at Transformers, The Rise of the Beasts. Now, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, any way to improve the show, please drop me a line, cinemajudge@hotmail.com. I can't grow if I don't know, guys. So let me know what I could do better. All I care about is you guys being entertained and coming back and maybe sharing it with your friends. Whatever works for you. Because like I always say, any movie is somebody's favorite movie. Who am I to tell you what's good or bad? That's what this show's all about. So drop me a line, cinemajudge@hotmail.com. Go to TikTok. Go to Instagram, The Cinema Judge. Also, go check out YouTube. I'm on most platforms. I love to have your feedback. And I'm also on the Meta Universe. If you guys ever go there, it's a blast. Just look up Cinema Judge. I'm usually out there somewhere having fun. So don't be shy. If you see me out there in the Horizon Worlds, stop on in, say hi. I love it when I'm out there and just chatting about movies. I'm often at a place called Asa Clubs. It's a laser tag type deal. It's a super blast. This guy named Mikey Ace created that world. Asa Clubs, it's fantastic. Also a place called After Party. It's connected kind of to that whole area. But there they just play music, you shoot hoops, whatever. Come on over, play, chat, talk movies, whatever works for you. Now it's one of my favorite parts of this show. This is where I give you a shout out, the people who listened to the last episode. And don't think for 1 second, if you listen to any of the past catalog, I really appreciate that. Every time I see anybody listen to a show, I do a little bit of a happy dance. I'm not even going to lie to you. But that's just a lot harder to find out who, what, when, where, or how. Last week's episode is always the easiest one to follow. So that's why in this segment, I thank the last episode viewers, or listeners, I should say. And I love hearing about how you listen to the show. Whether you're driving to work, sitting at home, doing the laundry, dishes, whatever it is. Some people use it as a nightlight. where they just put it on at night and let it roll. That's totally cool. I don't care how you listen. You might even be listening 2 years from now. It doesn't matter. We're here to share movies. That's what we're all about here. I'm the judge. You're the jury. And you make up your own mind. And you get to listen to your own leisure here. No yelling, no screaming, no criticizing this or that. That's not what we do here at the Cinema Judge. We just want to give you the evidence and sit back and learn about a movie. That's our jam here. So I don't care where you are or what you're doing. I'm just glad that you're listening. So for everybody, this is for you. Wherever, whenever, or whatever you're doing, this is for you. My listeners from the United States, so many from Germany. Thanks a lot, Germany. Also from Poland and the United Kingdom. Every one of you. Thanks for taking time out of your busy life to listen to this show. From Minneapolis, Minnesota, St. Paul, Minnesota, Overland Park, Kansas, Maple Grove, Minnesota, Valencia, California. And this one from Poland, I horrible trying to pronounce this one. BIDGOSZCZ. And there's a couple more words after that. But truly, 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 thank you for listening. London, England, fantastic. Thank you so much, England. Frankfurt AM Main Hesse, always a regular. Annapolis Junction, Maryland. North Rhine, thank you so much. Oak Park, Minnesota. Highland Ranch, Colorado, just to name a few. And I mean this with the bottom of my heart. And a lot of you I didn't mention, but every one of you, when I see that a city, state, country show up, I truly get elated. So I can't thank you enough. And I hope you like it enough to share it with your friends, or at least just keep coming back every week. I really appreciate that. But now it's time for the Bourbon Shoutout. This week it goes out to Jay Rivera and Kenny Stokes. You guys, every week, talking movies. Thanks for listening to the show. You guys are amazing, and I really, really, really appreciate you guys talking to me. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, these two gentlemen are so fun to talk to. They're a lot younger than I am. They're in their 20s, and I'm clearly not in my 20s. But I love talking movies from different people's perspective. That's what makes movies so wonderful. We all have a different perspective, and there's movies they've never seen that I think everybody has. And that's the joy of it all, discovering movies together. That's what this show's all about, because we all have different tastes, and that's what makes it great. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong for liking this movie or that movie. Because, we all work hard for our money. We all want the same thing, an enjoyable movie experience. And that's why I like talking to these two gentlemen. They are such fun guys, but their perspective is totally different than mine. My lifestyle is totally different than them, and that's what makes movies wonderful. But I also want to make another shout out to, I'll call this a double shot. This one goes out to Jesse Cove. Last week I had the incredible honor of interviewing this actor. He's in a movie coming up soon called A Taste of Love. The guy was classy, kind, patient, and funny, talking about the movie industry. If you get a chance, listen to that episode where I interview Jesse Cove. Incredible guy, and I can't thank him enough. So to all three of you, cheers. But now it's the music section. Like we talked earlier, this first is a TV show. I do a TV show, and I sit there and edit. And what I love about doing the TV version is I don't have to talk or anything. I'm just cranking tunes, editing music. It's my happy place. So when I did this one, in the vein of Maximum Overdrive. Now, you might not know what this movie is, but it's a movie in the 80s. It was based on a book called Trucks by Stephen King. It's where all the cars and everything come to life. Well, so in a sense, it's a bit of a stretch, mind you, but since these have cars that come alive and all that jazz, I said, hey, I'll listen to music that was in Maximum Overdrive. So what am I going to do? And if you remember the movie, you know what I'm talking about. I had to throw down some AC/DC because, come on, AC/DC, why not? It was in Maximum Overdrive. This is, kind of the same deal. So what I did was I threw down some of their classics. I went to the beginning. I went to High Voltage, which is loaded with tunes. If you haven't listened to some of the early stuff with Bon Scott, do so. I mean, Brian Johnson did wonderful work after he passed. But just, I'm not comparing him at all, but every once in a while I just go back to the Bon Scott days and throw down his stuff, because he had such a wicked sense of humor. You could even hear it in his songs, but they were also very bluesy too. I know he's thinking AC/DC bluesy, but they are, and really were a lot more then too. Some of the songs is very bluesy-ish. So I know some of you might say ish heavily on, but truly give that early stuff a shot. Like, for example, I said High Voltage, Power Age, another great album. Let There Be Rock, great album. And obviously Highway to Hell. Come on, I mean, that's just, again, loaded with tunes. And obviously I can't forget Dirty Deeds, Done Dirt Cheap, another spectacular album. And then after that, of course, I still went through the newer stuff too. I was just in that mood with this kind of movie. I threw down and I was air drumming, air guitaring. You can't stay still when it's AC/DC. So that's what I was listening to when I was making the TV version of this, which becomes the podcast. Rock and roll. Well, that is it. My glass awaits. I'm thirsty. So cheers to you and to the movies. So until next time, be well, be good, and I'm gone. I'm Jeff. Thanks for listening to The Cinema Judge.